Hello everyone. I hope you all are doing well. So basically this video is for lab 6B and I will be just going through the solutions for all the questions in this lab or for most of them. And you can just watch this video and to get an idea of how you are supposed to complete this lab. All right. So the first question in lab 6B, it says change the code so that it checks if a basketball team entered by the user has won the Bahrain League in any of the 5 years, um, in any of the last 5 years. Your code will need to prompt. So again, we know we're reading something from the user. You need you should prompt the user to enter a team, and then you are supposed to search through the array of the winners and display a message indicating to the user whether the team entered has won the league in any of the last 5 years. Now, if you remember in one of the previous labs, I think 6A, there was a question to us stated here that in which you were supposed to just make some changes to the array that was given to you, and you were supposed to display it. Now here you're supposed to change your code in a way that you already have the array, but now you need to prompt the user so that the user gives you a name, all right, of a team, and you're supposed to search through the array to figure out whether or not this specific team has won the league or not, which means is this team present in the array, all right? Now, if that team that the user has given you through the input has won the league, which means if it is present in the array, which is here, the winners array, then you're supposed to display out the name of the team and then a message that says has won the league in the last 5 years. All right. And if, for example, there's a team that the user gave you who has not that has not won the league, then you're supposed to just print some whatever that team is has not won the league in the last 5 years. All right. Now, if you notice, the basic concept of this question is that you're supposed to search through the array to figure out if a specific element that the user is giving you this time is present within the array or not. All right, and it has the question also has a hint which says one option is to use a while loop through to loop through the array. Use a flag to indicate whether the item you're looking for has been found. Remember to use the correct method when comparing the strings. Now, here they're just suggesting that you code using a while loop and a flag. Whenever a question says that there's a flag, that really means it's a Boolean variable that indicates whether or not whatever you're looking for has been found or not, which means, let's say I'm trying to find Manama in the array. All right. Now, if in the array Manama is present, I will change the flag, whatever the flag it is, whatever Boolean variable is there, to true to indicate that okay, I found it. But if you never find an element in the array, that flag will never change to true because the flag always changes only when it's supposed to only change when you found something. All right. So here, the first thing I would do is I would create a flag to indicate whether or not I've found the team or not. All right. So for that, I will just write here Boolean found is equal to false. Now, because I'm assigning false to it initially, it means it has never been found. All right, whatever we're trying to look has never been found. Now, once we're done with that, we know that we're supposed to prompt the user, right? Which means we're supposed to get a team from them. So for that, I will create, okay, so scanner is already imported. So I'll also create the object for it. So scanner input is equal to new scanner system dot in. All right, that will be my scanner. Now, once I'm done with that, I need to prompt the user with this sentence, right? So I need to tell the user, please enter a team name, and um, based on that, we will look we'll search through the array. Now, I will leave the array here at the beginning, all right? And so basically, this will store all the values that are there in the array, which means the teams that have won in the last 5 years. Now, after this, I will prompt the user using system.out.println. All right. So the user would know what the program is expecting from them. All right. Now, the user will give you a text in return as input, right? For that, we need a string. Let's say team is equal to whatever the user has given you the input. So input using the scanner object, input dot next or next line. It's really up to you, whichever one you want to use. All right, because sometimes the city name can be, oh, sorry, sometimes the team name can be Isa Town also, right? So those are two words. There's a space in between that. So something like that. For that purpose, I'm using next line. All right, now, so we've prompted the user here. All right, and then we've read and stored input. Now we're done with that. Now comes the searching part. All right, I'll show you how to do it with a for loop also, but for this question, since it's mentioned as a while loop, I'll show you that also. So using a while loop, for using a while loop, we need to create, we need the initialization before the loop, right? So in that, for that, I will write index is equal to 0. We know arrays start from 0. That's why index is equal to 0. Now, while, all right, two things should happen. Either, okay, there are two conditions where this loop should stop iterating. First, if you have reached the end of the array, all right? Or second, if you have found the whatever you're looking for, all right? So if you found, let's say the user gave you Manama as the input and you found that input in the array, so you stop looping. You don't want to go until the end, right? Because Manama here is actually the first element. If you found it at the first element, you stop looping because you found it. You don't go until the end, even though you found it. So whenever you write a while loop, whenever you write any loop, think of the condition as when does this loop need to stop? All right, when does the iteration or the repeating needs to stop? So I assume that at the moment I should stop iterating if I have found the element or if I have reached the end of the array. Because there can be a case where you have not found anything and you've gone through the whole array, and if you don't have that condition, so for example, if I just leave it as if not, or if found, sorry, if found is equal to false, if I keep it like that so that it keeps repeating that way, um, it could be that you never find that element in the array, and so once the whole array, you've gone through the whole array and you're at the end, it will try to go to the next index because the condition was never there to stop it when the array ends. All right. So in this case, you only loop, you should write a condition for when the loop should keep repeating. All right. But you need to think of the condition also when the loop should stop repeating. So if found is equal to false, all right, and um, index is less than winners dot length. All right. So this loop will only repeat if you have not found the element and the index is still less than the length of the array, which means if both of these conditions are true, you will keep looping. But if one of this condition, let's say found becomes true, then you don't loop, because you've already found, all right? Or let's say if index becomes equal to the length or greater than the length, then you don't loop because of the and, right? Because and requires both the conditions to be satisfied, all right? Okay, now once we're done writing that, we need to check. Now is when you check, right? Because the basic purpose is we're searching based on a value that we already have. We're searching if this value exists in the array, right? So we need to check if at the current index or at the current place in the array where we're looping, if that value is the same as the value that the user gave us. So if I want to write it that way, I would write if team, and because both of them are string, we need to use the dot equals, right? So if you use dot equals, now I'll tell you what's the difference. If I use dot equals and then I write, let's say, winners of index, if, okay, if I use dot equals, the problem is it will only um, it will only consider it the same word if it is written in the same way, which means manama will only be the same, considered same as manama. It will, if the user gives you this um, input, it will not be considered the same because the cases are different, right? Because this m is small and then this one is capital. So in order to ignore the case, you can just write equals ignore case. Because in this case, it doesn't really matter if you give the spelling should match, but the case doesn't really matter because there's no sensitivity to it. Like for example, if it was a password, then it would make sense to keep the cases as the same. But because this is just searching and looking for a specific element, it doesn't really matter. All right. So if the team that the user gave me is equal to the current value that we're looking at the current index, then you should change your flag, which in this case is found is equal to true. All right. Now, once we're done doing that, don't forget to increment the index. All right. So you have your initialization, all right, your condition, your block, and then also your increment. So always when you write a loop, make sure you have these four things. Now what happens is basically, let's say the user gave us Citra, all right? Now let's assume the user gave us the input as Citra. Now the loop will start looping from this, the zero index, right? So it will check, and at the beginning, found is equal to false, right? Now, at the beginning, what will happen is basically uh, it will start looping with the index, sorry, it will start with index 0. And in the beginning, found is equal to false already. So that this is true. And index, which is 0, is less than 5 because this array has 5 elements, right? So 0 is less than 5, which is true. And then found is already false. So this is true. So it will loop and it will check if team, which is the user given team, which I just said in this case is Citra, is it the same as winner of index 0? So at 0 it's Manama, so it's not the same, right? So it will skip this block and it will change the index to 1, and then it will check again. Found is still false, and index, which is at the moment 1, is again less than 5. So this is true again. So at this point, it will check if Citra, which is the user given input, is it the same with ignored cases? Is it the same as the current value at the current index, which is the same? Citra is the same as the input, right? So in this case, found will become true, all right? And then you will increment your index again. So your index will become 2. And then once you go back to your condition, at this point, found is now true. So this condition becomes false because we were looking for found to be false in order to loop, right? So because the condition is false now, you exit the loop. Now, once you exit the loop, there are these two messages that are supposed to be displayed, right? So for that, I'll just remove this loop for now. Okay, I won't remove it. I'll show you how to do it with a for loop also. Now here, I will check um, if found is still equal to false outside the loop. All right, if found is still equal to false, then you just print out for the user this specific statement. All right, so system.out.println, and you print team. All right, concatenate it with this, and this will be your answer. But if but if it is true, then you can take the same thing, all right, and just remove the not, because that's the exact same thing, right? Hopefully. So I just remove not, okay, and then has one. So if found is false after looping and going through the whole array, if found is still false, that means you've never found that particular element that you're looking for. But if it becomes true, that means somewhere while you were looping, uh, the condition was true because the names were the same in this case, and so found was changed to true. And if that was the case, then you have to say that okay, they have won because you found that name in the array. All right. Now the same thing if I had to write in for loop, all I had to do was just add this specific statement with the condition, all right, and this particular statement with the condition. That's all. You choose how you want to write it. There is no compulsion in however you choose to write it. Just make sure whatever you're writing is following the standard, which is it has initialization, it has a particular condition, it has increment, and then it also has a block. And it's working in the same way also. All right, you just have to make sure of that. Now, if I remove this because it's not required in this question and I try to pre-check it, let's see what happens. Okay, so it has cleared the pre-check. Let's click on check and let's see what happens. Okay, so all of them have been correct. So this question is is done. All right. Now moving to the next question, let's see what it has. Okay. Now this question, it says the program contains two arrays to store 10 student names and their results for a math test. All right. So you have two arrays. One of them stores the names. All right. And then one of them stores the grade for a math test that happened. All right, and you're supposed to write a method to search highest that will search for the student who got the highest score, print out his or her name and the highest score. Write a method average that will return the average score for the class. All right, so it should be this way. You have an array, all right, for student names, and then you also have an array for marks for math test. And now we're assuming then that if that the student at a specified index has the same score at that specified index in the other array. So that means John has scored 52.4. Mariam has scored 67. Fatma has scored 87.3. So and so on and so forth. So whatever index, so here Fatma is at the second index. So her mark in the grades array will also be at the second index. All right. Now, how can we write search highest? We have to figure out, first of all, we have to figure out which is the highest here. All right. Now, keep one thing in mind that whenever you're searching for a highest, or not that case. Like for example, if you're comparing within the array, for example, you're trying to find the highest or the lowest or whatever that is. Always try to start by considering or assuming that the first value or the value at the zero index is the one that you're looking for. Let's say here I'm trying to find the highest. So I'm going to assume that whatever value is at the zero index is the highest before starting. All right, it's just an assumption that you make. And then using that value, you start comparing the other indexes. Let's see how. All right, so here, like I said, first of all, we need to have basically this array, right? Sorry, we don't need to have it because it's already there, right? We already have a student's array given to the method, and then we already have a grades, and they're similar as mentioned here. All right. So here I'm going to assume that let's say um, because the grades is double right here, so I'm going to say that the highest is equal to grades of 0. Like I said, we're just assuming. All right. Now, after that, I know that if the highest, let's say here is 93, hopefully, it's at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th. Yeah, so it's at the 5th index, right? So that means it is for the student which is at the 5th index in this array also. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So Zainab basically has scored 93. Um, Wait, not Zainab. It says Mary here. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's Mary. Mary has scored 93.6. So whatever this index is, you need to figure out what value is at that specified index in the student's array. So in order to store that index also, I'll create a variable and I'll call it highest index. All right, and I will give it a default value of 0 because here also I've taken 0, right? So let's consider it that way. Now we have to search through the whole array. You cannot stop at a specified index because this is basically an unsorted array, right? So you have to go through the whole array. I would do it this way: for int index is equal to 0, index is less than students, or sorry, it's less than grades because we're going through the grades array, right? So grades dot length, all right, and plus plus index. Now within this, I will check if highest, or you can even say grades of index is basically higher than the current index we have, than the current highest that we have. In that case, you would just change the highest index to index. All right. And what happens basically, you go through the whole index, you start at 0. All right. You see, we've assumed that the highest currently is 52 point. Okay, sorry, my mistake. We also require to change the highest. All right. So you would change highest to grades of index. All right. Now, in this case, what happens basically is you start from 0. All right. You assume that this is the highest and you start comparing. So when you're at the 0 position, all right, you will check if the grades of index is greater than highest. We know highest currently is grades of 0, which is 24.5. It's not higher because it's the same value right now. So what happens? You skip and then you change the index. You go to 67.9, and with because this condition is still true, you check if 67.9 is greater than the highest we already have, which is 52.4. It is. So what happens? You change your highest to 67.9 and you change the highest index to 1 because that's where you found it, right? And you keep doing that until you reach the end of the array. Now, once you reach the end of the array and you stop looping, you need to print out for the user that which was the student who got the highest and what was their score. So I'll just copy this whole thing, all right, and I'll print it out here. System.out.println, all right. So the first thing I need to print out is the name of the student. We know the highest index, whichever that index is. Let's say it was 5. So you need to look at the 5th index in the students array also to figure out which student it was. All right. So I would just write students of highest index got the highest grades in the class, and then the same thing you can do with the grades to figure out um, their mark. All right, highest index, and that should give you the highest index. Now average is very easy because average is you figure out the sum of all the the sum of all the marks and you divide it by how many other students are there. All right, so in order to figure out the sum, again, you need to go through the whole array. You'll add 52.4 to 67.9, whatever that result is. You add it to the next number and the next until you reach the end. So for that, and because it's double, we need to keep a count of the total, right? While you're looping, you need to keep the count of, okay, I was at this position. When I moved to this position, what was the total sum? And then when I moved to the next position, what was the total sum? So for that, you can keep it as 0 0.0, all right? And you just start looping through the array the same way, all right? So I copy that whole thing, and that's how you would write it. So if I want to add it, all I do is total is equal to the previous total that was there plus the current grades that we're looking at with the current index. All right, this will give you the total, the current total. Once you're done looping through all of it, you will get the sum of all of these numbers as one number and it's stored in total. All right, that you can get the average using total divided by the number of students, right? So students dot length. How do you get the number of students? How many ever students are stored in that array, right? So that will give you the total number of students. You divide you divide the total that you have divided by the number of students, and then you display it as the class average. I hope this is how you calculate average, but let's see. Okay, system dot out dot print ln. Let's click on pre-check to see if what we've done is correct. Missing return statement. Oh, okay. I should have looked at that. See here, this method is basically returning it, all right? Which means I'm not supposed to display average and all of that. I'm just supposed to return, and somewhere else in the code it is being printed out. So all I have to do is I can just do this. Return. I don't even need to create the variable. Return total divided by students.length. That will be the average, right? Hopefully, let's see it works. Okay. Okay. This means that we have to format it to 2 digits, right? So in this case, what we can do is we need the decimal format. Okay. So I will just create decimal format. FMT is equal to new decimal format. All right, and then let's see if it will work with hash or it needs the zero also. Um, Actually, I just gone through the question. You do not need decimal format for this. All you had to do was just change total to 0, and index should be 0, and the rest should be fine. Now, if I click on pre-check, it should be fine. Um, it's giving me the correct answer. Hopefully, the check also works. Yes. All right. So that's how you would do the second question also. All we're doing, so when you're searching, just start searching from the 0 index. And if you're finding out the total, you start from 0. You give the variable a 0 value, and then you start calculating, adding within the loop. If you're searching, always, if you're actually finding something within the array, within an unsorted array, you always assume the whatever you're searching for, the first value in the loop in the array, which is at the 0 index, is whatever you're looking for, like in this case. All right. So this should be your answer for this question. Now the last one, it says write a main method in a class basic array that performs the following tasks. So the first thing I would do is just get that thing out of the way. So I would write public class basic array. All right. And then I would write public static void main string array args. All right. Now, the first thing you need to do is stores up to a maximum of 5 integers in an array, which means it doesn't say that it doesn't give you the values that you're supposed to store, but it says you need some storage that can store a maximum of 5 integers in the array. So to create that, you can create an integer array, name it numbers is equal to new int array, which can hold 5 numbers. So the size that says 5 numbers or 5 integers should be mentioned here. Now after that, it prompts the user to enter uh, numbers until the sentinel value minus 99 is entered or the array is full. All right, so in this case, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to keep looping to prompt, just like how it keeps looping, until the array is full or the user enters the minus 99 value. All right, now in this case, because we're reading from the user, we need to first of all import java.util.scanner. Oh, sorry. And you're supposed to create the scanner object also. So input is equal to new scanner system.in. Okay. Once we're done doing that, we know that we're repeating the prompt, right? So let's write it without repeating. First, you would write system.out.println, and then you would write the same thing. Sorry about that. You would just write enter number. All right. And then you would have, I would just create a number here, int um, user number, let's say. All right. And then I would say user number is equal to input dot, because we're reading an integer, next int. All right. Now we know if you're repeating, you need to repeat these 2 lines of code, right? And you need to repeat it until you get minus 99. All right. Or the array is full, which means you've already taken 5 numbers. Now, let's create a flag. All right. Um, I would call it exit and I will make it as false. All right. And then I will write, sorry, I will write here a while loop. All right. So I'll write it as int index for the initialization is equal to 0, while exit is equal to false. All right. And index is less than numbers dot length. Okay, whatever that length is. Within this loop, I will add these two statements. All right. So this will basically keep repeating and keep getting the number from the user. Now, if that number, as mentioned, if the user number was equal to minus 99, I should exit the loop, which means exit should now become true. And if exit becomes true, this condition will become false, the whole condition will become false because of the AND operator, and then you will just exit the loop. All right. Now, one thing we're missing here basically is that if the number was equal to 99, you exit. That is true. But if it was not equal to 99, then you have to store it in the array at that index, right? So you would write else. For storing, you would write numbers of index should be equal to user number. All right. And finally, you should not forget the increment. Now, once you're done with that, once you're done taking the numbers, it should print array content, a statement array content, and all the values that were there in the array. And finally, enter array average. Okay, so it prints out all the values in the array, all right, and then calculates the average of the numbers in the array and prints out the value. I think it should have been an array average without the enter word. Does not display any null values from the array. All right. So after this, after you've taken the input, basically you're supposed to display the content. All right. So you would say system dot out dot println. All right. And then you would write the same as here, which is array content. Okay. And then you would start printing the array. So I would use a for loop for that. Int index is equal to 0, index is less than, or you can just use the same thing basically. Just change index to 0 again. Then you wouldn't need the initialization here because we already have an index here, right? So, and then index should be less than numbers dot length plus plus index. And then you just print out system dot out dot print ln, and then I would just print numbers of index. All right. Now within this loop itself, I can just figure out the average, right? Or within the first loop also, you could have figured it out. But in this loop, I would figure out the average. It also says that it should not display any null values from the array. So you could even just write if numbers of index is not equal to null. All right. In that case, you can print out the number. All right. And then similarly, like we did in the previous example, you create an int because all of the values are integers. So you would create an int total, give it a value of 0 initially, and then you can just write total is equal to total plus um, numbers of index. All right, that would give you the average. Now, I am not sure, but I think the enter word should not be there, but let's see. All right, I will finally, once I'm done with the loop, I can finally print this out using system dot out dot print ln. Remove this and just write total divided by, with brackets is better, divided by numbers dot length. All right, let's try to pre-check if it's correct. Oh, my bad. The null basically is usually for objects, for primitive, for it's not for non primitive data types like integer and everything. So you can just comment this out. All right, and then click on pre-check. The only thing is there's a point, right? So all I have to do is just put F probably. Oh, my bad. Because it's length, it shouldn't be F. My bad. Um, you can make this into double. That would be fine also. Yeah, so now it has that point 0 because all of them were integer. The answer was also integer. So, but in this case, it has had to be a double. So we had to change it that way. All right. So this is how you would do this question. All you need to change here is just remove this. The null, usually you can use it with, if this was like a string array, you could have used null because null is usually for objects, not for primitive data types, and integer is a primitive data type, right? So yeah, let's see if check works. Okay, perfect. This should have been mentioned here that if it is empty, it should have shown empty. But what can we do? We know we've made a mistake, or I have made a mistake. If there is nothing in the array, all right, then you would just print array is empty, all right? And if there are only three values, the remaining are, why are the remaining zero? Because integer by default has a zero value, all right? So if numbers dot of index is not equal to zero, all right, then you're supposed to display all of this. Okay, then you would display total and then system.out.println. All right, but if again the array is empty, it has no value at all, we're also supposed to display that. All right, so in this case, you can check if, I think it will not work that way. How can we check?